A warm welcome. You're watching Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi with the top stories on the continent. The UN warns that thousands of South Sudanese face starvation as parts of the country experience famine. By July, half the population could be without a reliable food source. Tunisia's national airline is forced to suspend flights for several hours following a row over uniforms. The incident sparked anger amongst passengers who were left stranded for hours. And ignoring gender stereotypes and even militant threats, we meet one female Algerian international who'll let nothing stand in the way of her love of football. But first, the UN's warned that thousands of South Sudanese are facing starvation as the world's newest nation experiences famine in some parts. Well, the country descended into civil war in 2013 while drought has paralysed agriculture. The UN estimates that by July, 50% of the population could be without a reliable food source. Well, aid agencies are making airdrops to the worst-hit parts of the country, but access is at times limited. A short time ago, I spoke to Chalice McDonough of the UN World Food Programme. She told me the situation on the ground is dire.
A famine is the worst kind of food-related hunger catastrophe that there is. So it really is just dire. There are people who are already dying in those parts of Unity State, and there are about 1 million people in other parts of the country who are on the brink of famine. If we can't get food to them, and we can't get other forms of assistance to them fast in the next few months, then things could get much worse.
Now, several aid agencies have argued that this famine isn't receiving as much media attention as it should be. If there's one thing you'd like people to know about what's going on the ground, what would that be?
I mean, I think the thing that's really important to keep in mind is that it can be reversed. We can stop this, we can turn it around. There's been a massive humanitarian effort over the last 3 years that has kept famine at bay thus far, and we can turn this around, but it's going to take enormous resources to do that, and it's going to take access, so political engagement by the international community with the parties to the conflict, and the resources to be able to overcome the obstacles that keep us from accessing people. So we can do it, but we really need the world to pay attention. We need the help.
Chalice McDonough of the World Food Programme speaking to me a short time ago. Next, police in Johannesburg say 5 people have been wounded after officers fired rubber bullets to disperse protesters who were trying to set a councillor's home alight. Well, demonstrators allege that foreign nationals are being allocated public housing while locals live in shacks. It's just the latest violence against foreigners in South Africa and signals what some say is increasing xenophobia. France 24's Nicolas Germain has the details.
During a series of recent anti-immigrant protests in South Africa, this is the kind of comment that could be heard.
They're everywhere. So what about the future for our kids?
Foreigners defended their stores. No one has forgotten that in 2008, at least 67 people were killed in xenophobic violence. This South African businesswoman and her Senegalese husband have run a clothes shop in Pretoria for the last 14 years. Most of her employees are immigrants.
It's all about jealousy. Let us stop fighting innocent people. If it's all about xenophobic, why are we fighting among ourselves, black to black? What's that?
Ministers have condemned these attacks, but analysts say they actually create a useful diversion for the government.
People do blame foreigners for lack of opportunities and services here. But that probably suits leaders because really it's issues always behind it that are political and economic in nature. Either people feel they're not getting enough, there aren't enough job opportunities, or there are problems with housing allocations.
Nigerians have been particularly targeted in recent weeks. They have been accused of dominating the commercial sex trade in certain districts. But Nigerian representatives rejected this stereotype.
You don't have to paint everybody with the same brush. There are a lot of Nigerians that's contributing positively in every sector of the economy of South Africa. We have people in the health sector. We have medical doctors in the health sector. We have professors and teachers.
After yet more anti-immigrant protests this Thursday, and with South Africa's unemployment rate at 26%, many foreigners fear that xenophobic violence will not disappear rapidly.
Madagascar officials say the death toll's risen to 5 and that thousands have left their homes due to damage caused by cyclone Inao, which has battered the island nation. Well, despite wind speeds weakening from 300 to 65 kilometres per hour, authorities have warned of possible flooding, including in the capital Antananarivo. Well, the government and aid groups are providing shelter and food to those affected by the tropical storm. A Nigerian court has sentenced 2 policemen to death for the 2005 killing of 6 traders on the outskirts of the capital, Abuja. The judge condemned the officers for what he called extrajudicial executions. The murder of the civilians, dubbed the APO 6, sparked outrage when police claimed they were armed bandits. But according to local media, 3 other policemen were freed in the case. Flights are slowly resuming, but earlier on Thursday, Tunisia's national airline was forced to suspend its flights after a dispute erupted over uniforms. Well, the airline has since apologised to angry Tunisair passengers who were left stranded. A crisis cell was also put in place to tackle the situation. Catherine Viette has more.
Stuck at the airport for hours because cabin crews and maintenance workers were fighting over uniforms. Tunisia's national airline apologized for the incident, saying the halt was aimed at preserving the safety of the fleet after an altercation at the airport. But the apology did little to appease irate passengers.
This is a big problem. I was staying here at 6:30, want to go to Brussels. The flight was cancelled. For just a small thing, you know. Democracy means also you have to work or you have to negotiate to get a solution.
We want our country to move forward and away from these problems. It's not normal that a dispute between the staff should hold up the whole airport. It's not acceptable.
The latest incident is part of rising tensions as some mechanics recently staged a sit-in to protest their treatment by pilots. The timing couldn't be worse for Tunisair, which has been struggling financially since the 2011 revolution. Terror attacks in Sousse and at the Bardo Museum in 2015 have seen tourism plummet, adding to the airline's woes. But in one bright spot, the company was able to sell an Airbus A340, originally intended for former President Ben Ali, to Turkish Airlines in December. The cost of keeping it in France was weighing heavily on the books.
And finally to Algeria, where players in a professional all-female football team are refusing to be defined by gender roles. Well, for 26-year-old Fatiha and her teammates, the love of the game is far more important than stereotypes and even militant threats in the conservative nation.
Training for a League Cup game in Relizane, west of the Algerian capital. The Afak Relizane women's team was launched in 1997 during the country's civil war, back when armed Islamists prohibited all women's sports. But the team's coach and its players refused to be intimidated.
I had a conversation with the players to ask them if they wanted to keep playing in spite of the threat. They decided to play on. They said if women took up arms during the war for independence, so could they. They wanted to fight that threat and keep playing.
26-year-old Fatia also plays for the national team, like 5 of the club's other players. The war may be over, but she says they still face social stigma in the conservative yet football-mad North African country.
Everywhere in Algeria, people have a problem with women playing football. Sometimes when we're playing away and they see us in our football jerseys, they curse and insult us. But others are curious and ask questions. Like here in Relizane, they tell us that our success brings them pride more than the men's team.
Some of the girls succumb to pressure to hang up their boots after marriage, but others are determined to play on.
They tell us, why don't you get married? Why aren't you in the kitchen? A woman is made to stay in the kitchen. But I'm just playing football. I'm not doing anything wrong. Their words can't hurt me. I know I'm not doing anything wrong in the eyes of God.
In recent years, the club's women's team has won multiple domestic and regional tournaments. Despite their runaway success, the players are unpaid, and the club helps them find work on the side. They're awarded only $12 for every game won, and few locals travel to games. The squad also has no sponsor or external financing, surviving only on passion for the beautiful game.
Well, there you have it. That's it from your Africa team for now. Up next, though, more international headlines. Do stay tuned.
The 51%, presented by Annette Young.
A programme about women who are reshaping our world. We meet those who seek equality, be it in the boardroom or at the village well. The 51% brings you stories from across the globe about the women who are challenging the way we think.
The 51% on France 24 and France24.com.